Hello, my name is Gurpreet Dillon and I'm a professor of information systems at Virginia Commonwealth University in Richmond, Virginia. The topic of our discussion today is emergent organizational forms and how they impact information technology adoption and how information technology in turn affects the organization forms. It is important to understand the reason behind any company, any institution should be thinking about organization forms. End of the day, an institution, a company has to survive and has to minimize its transaction costs. So perhaps transaction costs are one of the primary reasons why we want to bring in efficiency and effectiveness in our organization. If you look at any company, as is evident in this particular graphic, there are internal transaction costs of coordination, of planning, of how they are going to be managing their operations, how the structures are going to be established, who's going to be reporting to whom, how the rules are being created for roles and responsibilities in an organization. These are all internal transaction costs because at the end of the day there is a cost associated with managing, planning, controlling, coordinating, and so on and so forth. Similarly, when a company A might be interacting with company B, there is an external transaction cost as well as to how this particular company is going to be transacting its business with company B. Now, this kind of a transaction cost may come from optimization of the business processes. It might come from outsourcing relationships or any other sourcing relationships there might be. And also the mere fact of linking the supply chains between one company and the other. So there is clearly a transaction cost involved between company A and company B. And hence we need to bring in some kind of an efficiency and an effective structure to manage and minimize and optimize these transaction costs within and outside the company. Hence it becomes very important for us to be thinking about what kind of organizational structures, what kind of coordination structures that any institution needs to have in place. Is it going to be a more hierarchical institution that we want to have in place, or is it a more flatter, organismic kind of an organization, institution that we want to create? A lot of scholars in the field of strategic management and as well as in information systems have thought about, have considered different organization forms. One of the primary persons which I'm very fond of is Henry Mintzberg. And Mintzberg came up with what he called 6 basic types of organizations. Any institution has an ideology, has a value system, has a purpose why it exists. But it organizes itself into a strategic apex, a middle line, an operating core, a technostructure, and some kind of a support staff structure. So an institution actually is composed of these 5 components as conceptualized by Mintzberg. And the way in which these 5 structures come along are actually they get different kinds of pulls and end up creating 6 different forms of organizations. It is important to understand what the strategic apex means, what the middle line means, operating core means, support staff, and the technostructure, because these are the ones how they pull towards each other, which is going to create different organization structures and forms given the context in which we might be operating in. Here in this graphic, you see an example of any institute. This is a school example where your strategic apex might be the superintendent of a school district, and your middle line could be a school principal who ends up reporting to the strategic apex. And then you have all the teachers who are the operating core. The technostructure would be the coordinators, the instructional supervisors who are providing support but more of a technical kind. And then the 5th is the support staff, which could be the accountants, the maintenance, the facilities management people. And Mintzberg classifies them into different categories. And if you take this kind of an organization structure without even thinking about how they are organized, but more in terms of these 5 blobs, then one can very easily see how one is going to be dominant on the other in different organization contexts. If you were to take the same organization structures and the key parts of this organization into a university setting, you could argue that the Department of Education in any kind of state is the superintendent or the strategic apex, which is managing the various institutions. The middle line in that case would be the deans and the provosts of a university, and then the operating core are the faculty. Clearly, we need a lot of technical support. The technical structure may it come from the learning management systems that we have in place, may it come from instructional design, and so on and so forth. And then you have the support staff, which is again the whole budget and accounting, finance people who support the whole edifice. So you can take this kind of 5 core structures of Mintzberg and apply it in different contexts, and you're probably going to see a similar thing. Now, it is interesting to see, however, that there are different kinds of pulls on these institutions and these structures. So if the pull is more towards direction, it becomes more entrepreneurial. If our objective is more of efficiency, then it becomes more of a machine hierarchy. And if accessibility is more important, then the support staff dominates and the operating core dominates and becomes more diversified. And similarly, if it's a learning organization of sorts, which is more innovative, then the strategic core and the middle line dominates. And if it's a professional bureaucracy of sorts where you're proficient in one aspect of the business, then your operating core dominates. So different organizational structures dominate in different kind of environments. The second aspect that I want to touch upon today is how organizations have evolved and changed over a period of time. And I'm always reminded of this one wonderful company that I used to do some work with years ago. It was an insurance company based out of England. When I first started working with them, they had 12,000 employees on their rolls. However, 8,000 were internal employees and about 4,000 were contractors and people coming and going. And within 5 years, with all the information technology changes and other things that were going on, the equation flipped. They still had 12,000, but only 4,000 or so were their core employees and 8,000 were contracting out with the company. Now that led me to think about something very interesting as how companies have evolved over a period of time to today, where any institution, any company seems to have a bigger and a stronger connection with external entities. So your external connections are becoming stronger as opposed to internal connections. 10, 15, 20 years ago, the internal connections between different units of an institution were pretty strong, and they really had strong connections with external communities. So that was a situation which you would see where you have weak external connections and strong internal connections, a typical hierarchical kind of an organization. Now, because of different pressures that any institution might have, coupled with our ability to use information and communication technologies more effectively, and along with that, this whole trend towards outsourcing, because if someone else can do it cheaper for us, why do it ourselves, has led to weaker internal connections and stronger external connections between institutions. And this has led to a newer form of an organization which we call a more amorphous kind of enterprise, as is evident in this particular graphic. And they are evidenced with loosely coupled institutions which are connected with each other. Now, this is in theory, and if you look around many organizations, they are perhaps organizing themselves along more along these lines, where they have weak internal connections and stronger external connections, to the extent at times that companies have been floated out from the mainstream as well. One such example that I have closely been associated with over the years is that of John Brown Engineering. It's an engineering and construction company which used to be the same kind of an industry as Bechtel's of the world. Now, John Brown was very interesting because they were way down in the league tables in the mid-90s, 18th, 19th, 20th rank. And as you would probably know, that engineering and construction companies, they are huge enterprises where they have very complex teams which come together to bid on maybe the North Sea oil explorations, building oil rigs, maintaining them, and so on and so forth. So it's a big enterprise, and for them efficiency and effectiveness becomes very, very important, and how they can leverage different teams in different places in order to deliver projects in a timely manner. So John Brown Engineering Company, they invested into virtual offices way back, ahead of their time in the mid-90s and late 90s, when other people were just thinking about what a virtual 24-hour working office would be. So that enabled John Brown at that time to leverage their design team sitting in one country in one time zone, with planners in another place and bidding on projects in a third place. And hence they were working 24/7, work being passed from one place to the other. Now this was only enabled through information and communication technologies. Had the technology not been there, John Brown would not have been able to leverage it and move up in the league tables, and eventually they were taken over by another European company. So, but to be profitable and be efficient and use information communication technologies to their advantage is a big enterprise. So when we talk about organization structures, they evolve, they change. Sometimes the strategic apex becomes more important, and other times it's the operating core, which is very, very important. But it is worth considering how different kinds of organization structures come together, and how information and communication technologies transform them in a sense, because today we are in the era of virtual organizations where work moves from one place to the other. Locational dependence is the last thing that anyone is actually talking about, because you can really be very mobile and yet be able to accomplish the task. So the organization structures have evolved as well as a consequence. Thank you very much.